Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished officials, and participants in this conference. I'm delighted and honored to have this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm grateful to PEMC, especially ED Amy Gonzalez, for providing me with this opportunity. When I first heard about PEMC's theme for this year's Congress, two words stood out to me: charting and hope. Charting means to show something on a chart or map, but it also means to pay close attention to or to record in great detail. Then there's the word hope, which is not only a great acronym for healthy oceans, people, and economies, but it's also a very powerful word, especially during this pandemic. One can then connect charting a new decade of hope for the ocean that we have, to the ocean we want, and to advance the science required for that desired ocean. And that brings us to the decade of ocean science for sustainable development, or the Ocean Decade. Yes, the United Nations General Assembly's declaration of this decade of ocean science, which begins this year, recognizes that the ocean we have, an ocean that provides us with at least half of the world's ocean oxygen supply, and covering 70% of the Earth's surface. That's the ocean that we have. An ocean with less known bottom features than the moon's surface, and with less investment than the space explorations pursued over the years, including the Mars expedition. From this vantage point, the decade defined its goals, articulated the challenges, and specified the outcomes, envisioning a clean, healthy, resilient, productive, predictable, safe, and accessible ocean. As a result, the priorities of the decade's research and development activities were established: a comprehensive ocean observing system, a quantitative understanding of ocean ecosystems and their functioning, capacity building and accelerated technology transfer, training and education, and ocean literacy. In-Earth system observation, research, and prediction supported by social and human sciences and economic valuation, among others. However, an intriguing viewpoint was expressed in a paper published this year in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science in the US. The authors, Singh et al., stated, and I quote, "Science does not inherently lead to sustainable or unsustainable outcomes. The outcomes will depend on how, where, when, and by whom the science is designed, funded, conducted, and used." They go on to say, "Our concern is that without an explicit consideration of leaving no one behind, scientific research meant simply to understand the ocean may inadvertently contribute to unsustainable and inequitable development." That's food for thought. So if we are to pursue the science that we need for the ocean we want, we have to check and ask, who is doing ocean science if there is a tremendous need for it? How much ocean science is done in our region? The Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission published two important reports in an attempt to answer this question. The Global Ocean Science Report 2017, followed by the report in 2020. The graph on the screen depicts the total number of ocean researchers plotted against the GDP of countries. So, researchers versus GDP. The countries with the most ocean science researchers in terms of GDP are Portugal and Norway. Only a few East Asian Seas countries, notably Japan and South Korea, are represented in this graph. This may be because of the absence of or delayed submission of data by other countries. But I guess this is also a call for our countries to obtain and to share this information. Another interesting finding in the report is that when scientists collaborate, their work appears to improve in quality, as measured by a metric called the average of relative impact factors. Here, the international co-publication rate plotted on the x-axis against the average relative impact factors, and it shows a positive slope. So the more scientists and individuals interact with international partners, the higher the impact factor of those publications. And that should be important to our science and scientists. Yet another interesting graph, maybe a subset of what was shared earlier, shows the proportion of national R&D spending dedicated to ocean science. The gross domestic expenditure on research and experimental development, or GERD. So this is GERD, and these are the countries, which obviously in this case information is limited. There are only 25 countries listed here. For now, maybe it doesn't matter yet, but it offers and raises more questions. What percentage of a country's GDP is spent on ocean research and development? Is it possible for countries to keep track of this? And do they care? What role, if any, could government agencies, academic institutions, and even funding and donor organizations play in encouraging data and information collection? Almost 20 years ago, PEMC examined academic programs in ocean and coastal governance available both within and outside East Asia. These programs covered environmental science, ocean science, fisheries, environmental impact assessment, and aquaculture. Several universities offered environmental management, marine affairs, and integrated coastal management programs. Most training courses in East Asia were delivered by universities, as you'll see in the graph, with a few delivered by training centers and also co-delivered by PEMC. In that study, two recommendations were made. PEMC's role should be strengthened, and a functional network of training institutions should be established. These suggestions were carried out. Currently, PEMC has 16 ICM learning centers and 3 regional centers of excellence from 9 countries in Asia. Nonetheless, it may be important to ask, is the demand for capacity development in ocean and coastal governance being met by our regions, universities, and training centers? Is there an increasing demand in our region for academic degrees and training courses? Is there a greater need for trained human resources? And are there jobs for these trained individuals? This leads us to the concern expressed at that article I referred to earlier. To achieve the ocean we want, we must better understand the needs and priorities of ocean-dependent peoples and evaluate potential solutions for them. If this is to happen, scientists have to be prepared and to respond to questions often asked by citizens, managers, and policymakers. What is happening? What can I or what can we do about it? We need to better link science to policy formulation. One group that articulates this is the Partnership for Interdisciplinary Studies of Coastal Oceans, or PISCO, an academic consortium in the US that conducts research to advance understanding of the coastal ocean within the California Current Large Marine Ecosystem and inform management and policy. This academic consortium states that the interactions of science with decision makers are ideally multidirectional, with policymakers or citizens influencing the directions of science, as well as scientific findings triggering new awareness, policy, and action. What is notable is that PISCO has sister boundary organizations with complementary missions that played key roles in enabling effective outreach. So this brings us to one of the several case studies where PEMC walked the talk. Manila Bay. Dr. Chua Tia Eng, ICM visionary and mentor who thinks like a scientist works like a manager and speaks like a diplomat, has always maintained that science plays a significant role in the environmental management and coastal and marine areas. Thus, he had a mantra, science-based integrated coastal management. Manila Bay, which is regarded as an East Asian pollution hotspot, would demonstrate examples of integrated management of a large and complex coastal area based on and benefiting from science-based activities and information. Science and the most up-to-date information and knowledge were to be used and was used to help manage Manila Bay. Many aspects of the program necessitated the use of current, validated data, so scientists were asked to help. PEMC's use of ICM approaches and tools in Manila Bay based on scientific evidence and the best available validated data must have aided the Supreme Court when it ordered 13 government agencies to clean up Manila Bay under the writ of continuing mandamus. This included the Manila Bay Coastal Strategy Operational Plan, the Manila Bay Environmental Risk Assessment, a total pollutant loading study, an oil spill contingency plan, and a Manila Bay Area Environmental Atlas. Following all efforts and interventions in Manila Bay, one of PEMC's important legacies is the adoption by the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA, of an ICZM planning framework in the 2020 Manila Bay Sustainable Development Master Plan. Its key principles of sustainability, precautionary, optimization of multiple uses, participatory, and multidisciplinary. We need young, innovative, resilient, committed, and imaginative scientists in this decade of ocean science and the years ahead. The COVID pandemic demonstrated what can be done. Remote learning, research findings and data shared with the scientific community even before they are published. Access to many more talks and conferences online and on demand, and daily and accessible COVID updates across our countries are just a few of the benefits. In the not too distant future, there will be new technologies, but even more challenges in our ocean planet. There will be skills and expertise that we may not even be aware of today. How many of the terms on the right side of the screen are you familiar with? Many, perhaps, but many more phrases may not be, not even to me. The younger generation and the young scientists need to believe and imagine a world with the possible and not be constrained by the impossible. We have to consider a future in which everyone, especially the younger generation and the ocean science community, are given equal opportunities regardless of gender or age group, and where local and indigenous knowledge is valued. We need to rely on best practices in ocean sciences while taking into account national and regional specificities, as well as corresponding jurisdictions. After all, the ocean in which we and future generations will live has a lot to offer and even more to learn about. It will require the co-creation of research and use of skills and expertise that includes diverse branches of inquiry, ranging from natural sciences, social sciences, traditional knowledge, philosophy, policy and governance research, planning, economics, law, human behavioral sciences, education science, and many other disciplines. During the decade of ocean science for sustainable development, let the young and the once young scientists and colleagues in allied disciplines chart and navigate our way to an ocean of hope, healthy oceans, people, and environment. Imagine and believe that the world is your oyster. Thank you very much.